everybody, it's Nunu, your friendly teacher guide, and my purpose in this video is to provide an overview of the small group discussion assignments that you will complete during this class. Their focus is the Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling podcast, published by the Free Press in 2023. Now, before I go over the discussion directions, I have two questions and I want to give you a little bit of background about this podcast. Now, the first question is, what is a podcast? Do you know? Well, the dictionary definition of a podcast is a digital audio file made available on the internet for downloading to a computer or mobile device, typically available as a series. And that is exactly what the Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling podcast is. It is a podcast. It has 7 chapters. Each chapter is about an hour long. We will cover 2 or 3 chapters at a time. So you won't have to sit down and listen to the entire 7 chapters of the podcast all at once. But I ask that you pace yourself. You prepare for this assignment carefully, so don't try to listen to the podcast at the last moment before this assignment is due. That's never a good idea. And definitely listen to this podcast very safely. Please don't play it in your car as you drive or listen to it through earphones as you walk around. You might lose sight of where you are. I advocate sitting safely in your chair at home and listening to the podcast. All right, on to the second question I had for you before I discuss the directions for these small group discussion assignments, and it's this. Do you know who J.K. Rowling is? I bet you do. Yes, that is the Harry Potter author. Her name is Joanne Rowling. J.K. Rowling is her pen name. When she published the first book in the Harry Potter series, her publishers thought that, hey, guys aren't going to want to read a book that a woman wrote, so they turned Joanne Rowling into J.K. Rowling. The K doesn't stand for anything. And I find that bit of trivia very fascinating, especially in 2023 in the United States of America, don't you? All right, now some background about this podcast, The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling. What is it about? It's all about how 2 very diverse groups in American and global society, religious conservatives and the transgender community and its allies, all went after Rowling on social media. How did that happen? How did she have 2 groups that we typically think of as the right and the left come after her? How did she earn that distinction? Well, we'll learn how that happened as we listen to the podcast chapters. But our purpose in listening to these podcast chapters, which, by the way, are the topic of our term paper, the longer essay due at the end of the semester, our purpose is not to decide if these groups, religious conservatives and the transgender community and its allies, were right in going after Rowling on social media. Our purpose is to discuss free speech. What are the responsibilities of free speech? What are the consequences of free speech? What should they be? That is our purpose. So we're using the podcast as a vehicle to discuss these important questions. Now, on to the directions. All right, scrolling down, we can see that the directions are very detailed. They should be very helpful to you. I'm not going to read the directions to you. I'm going to ask you to read them very carefully to yourself from beginning to end. I'm just going to point out key parts of the directions that you should pay particular attention to. Really keep them in mind. And the first is our class rule: use artificial intelligence, AI, appropriately. Definitely use Grammarly.com. It's a basic spelling, grammar, punctuation checker to help you to identify and correct easily avoidable errors in your text. But please do not use AI like Grammarly Go, Quillbot, or ChatGPT, which will write or revise your text for you. If you do that, I cannot do my job as your teacher guide, which is to help you to build, to strengthen your writing skills. All right, more about the directions. What did I want to tell you? You have a response that's due on Friday. It deals with a couple of articles and always 2 or 3 chapters of the podcast, The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling. You will be required to summarize the articles, the chapters, and to quote from them. So we're going to be practicing our writing skills as we discuss this podcast, The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling. We'll be practicing how to summarize a work and also how to use short and block quotes and write a works cited, the reference list at the end of a text. So read these really very, very carefully, all of these directions in here. And you also have a peer evaluation in this assignment, but it takes the form of letters that you are going to write to your peers. Now, this is a small group discussion, so you're not going to be writing letters to the entire class, just to your peers about one burning question that they're going to come up with in regard to the articles that they read and the podcast chapters that they listen to, that they summarize, okay? Now, something important that I also wanted to point out to you is that you have assignment resources. You can click on them here that will help you to summarize and help you with short and block quotes. And if you, for any reason, do not want to listen or cannot listen to the podcast, then you have a pod text here. You have the podcast that you can listen to. You have all the subtitles right here, and it's all punctuated, which is great. You also have all the videos of the podcast here that you can just click on one of these videos. So you can listen to the podcast by clicking up here on these links, or with the pod text here, you can read or you can listen through these videos here. Now, at the end of these assignment directions, I have text for The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling. They're optional. We are going to discuss some of these texts in our small group discussion. So you will be reading them, but you do not have to read all of these texts. But the podcast, The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling, is the topic of our term paper, and I recommend reading through these texts slowly as we go through our small group discussions. All right, if you have any questions or concerns, I am over here in inbox. Send me an email or come over here to home and scroll down to this office hours icon and click on it and learn my office hours if you want to meet face to face. I have Zoom office hours, and if I have campus office hours, you're very welcome to visit me. All right, who am I? I'm Nunu. I'm your friendly teacher guide, and I want your learning to be both meaningful and enjoyable in this class. So enjoy this assignment.